I want to welcome you all here today. I'm Linda Monik-Eisenberg, the chair of the Fine Arts Department, acting chair of the Fine Arts Department. Our actual chair is actually here today, which is good. And I'm thrilled to be introducing Samara Golden here today. She's the second visiting artist sponsored by the Fine Arts Department for this 2017-18 academic year. First, I'd like to thank the Fine Arts Visiting Artists Committee, the Visiting Artists Committee, excuse me, chaired by Jim Burke, and our Fine Arts faculty, and a personal call out to Natasha Pestich for the work that they do to bring these exemplary artists here to us at MCAD. Today it's especially lovely as we are welcoming Samara Golden back to MCAD. An MCAD alum who graduated in 1995 and received her MFA from Columbia University School of the Arts in New York in 2009. Samara is an installation artist who often combines sculpture, projected video, live video, and sound. She's been really busy since that graduation, her Columbia graduation. Her most recent project, The Meat Grinder's Iron Clothes, was included in the 2017 Whitney Biennial and has received high praise from many major news outlets. She's also had recent solo exhibitions at MoMA PS1 in New York, at Yerba Bueno Center for the Arts in San Francisco, at the Night Gallery in Los Angeles, and at Canada in New York. Her work was featured in the 2014 Hammer Museum Biennial, Made in LA, and Room to Live at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. In 2015, Golden was published in MoMA's PS1 monogram, and her work has been written about in Art Forum, Art in America, New York Times, The New Yorker, Moose, and Flash Art, among other publications. Now she lives and works in Los Angeles, but today she's here with us. Please give Samara a warm welcome.
Hi. Hi. Ooh. Tell me if this is too loud. I didn't know where to start this talk because I really like to have it so that I show you guys the whole line of thinking as it keeps on changing through a whole bunch of different projects, but then I always run out of time and never make it to my more recent projects. So I'm going to start with 3 that I'm going to blow through and just say really simple things about, and then I'll get into more depth with the other ones. But this was an installation in the First Night Gallery in Los Angeles. Sorry, I realize this probably is making a lot of noise. And this was just a really small gallery, and what I wanted to point out is it was just sort of like my work previously I'd been using video mixers, and it had sort of been a bit distant, and this was a breakthrough for me because it was a really emotional piece. And I sang the song. And there's a projection in the back wall, and sorry. So basically, there were just tons of personal details, and I had 2 months to do the project, and I really didn't want to do it. I just wanted to hide at that particular moment. And so I decided to use Armax, which is a material I actually used here for my senior project. But I actually had known about that material from my dad using it and making geodesic domes in our backyard when I was a kid. But for this, I just needed to be able to materialize a lot of stuff really quickly and by myself, and it's really light foam board. So there was a color key. Let's see, there's a camera pointed at the chairs, and then a red blob in one of the chairs, and then in the monitors I'm color keying in red ocean waves. And the only other thing I'm going to say about this is that there was a projection in the back that was like from this really lonely day And it was really important to me that the actual footage was the real footage, even though it was kind of crappy. Like, I could have gone back and shot nicer footage. But, it was about creating a feeling, and I also got a chance to make music, which was really nice. And then this was one room. There was that jacuzzi thing. And then the other room, this was the first time that I came up with this. Sorry, I want to turn this down. Okay. I came up with this way of making a migraine headache, which is basically like above the, well, I get migraines all the time, and I've been trying to represent that in some way in a lot of different projects. So what it was is, I think there's some pictures of it. It was like a projection of every picture from my phone at like milliseconds or something, so you can't really see any of them. And it was on the wall, and it just sort of like worked as this subliminal migraine aura, kind of, and a reminder or something, but you could never really catch what it was. You just felt it. And then there were other videos being reflected in mirrors and stuff. But, you know, it's a little embarrassing to show this piece, but it was a breakthrough for me to, like, put myself in my work in a different way. And I was so out of my mind that I would do it, you know, which I think is a good place to make artwork from. But, like, a lot of the videos are me making other projects. Like, I'm boiling a face, a clay face in a pan for one part of another thing, and there's me crying and stuff like that. So anyway, and all the details were super personal, but I know I was not going to spend a lot of time. So this is a piece called Bad Brains, and this is actually a reinstallment of it at the Zabludovich collection in London. But it was originally at the Frieze Art Fair, and it was sort of like, it was a project sort of that was like had a curator, and the curator wanted me to make something about Randall's Island, so I did all this research, and I don't really work like that. So I saw that all the research that I was reading was just about like all these paupers' graves, and which is like when you don't have any family and they bury you in a grave with a lot of other dead bodies. And they would do that on Randall's Island, and all the sadness, basically. And so then I realized I can't really make the piece about this research-based stuff and what's the sadness in my own life. So to be really blunt, this whole piece ended up being about suicide, and like these paintings that are in front ended up sort of like being all the souls of these people who are gone. And this projection, I can show you videos of all this stuff too if we have time, but this projection that looks like water also has my shadow in it appearing, and it has subliminal messages in the water that were like positive affirmations. This is like the only piece I've done where it's like really literally speaking to the audience, or there were some earlier ones, but it was sort of like telling the viewer, but you really can't see them, telling the viewer that they're loved or that they don't need to go kill themselves. And then quickly, so there was this, there's this black ribbon going through, and how I had it working is that there was a camera trained on that area, and then and the ribbon went straight through it, so you can see it in that monitor. And then I had an insanity script, is what I called it, which was like all this material taken from the internet. And this was like 2012, I think, when I originally made it. So it was like these tests you can take to see if you're insane, and some of them are jokes, and then some of it was just like my writing and anxiety and stuff like that. And I'm probably forgetting something, but I want to move on. But this is the original showing of it, which was less red. And then, I forgot to put the studio shots in. But the whole like great thing that I learned from this piece is that in the studio, it was like this incredibly powerful thing, and there was like a monkey that showed up in the monitor. which I couldn't recreate in this situation. And it was just really like, it was like kind of supernatural, and I really liked that, being able to like summon up something for myself. Okay, and then I think we have, oh wait, here you can see that there's also these monsters that come out from under the sides of the two sides of the water projection, and they only appear in the monitor. So basically, it's hard to see what I'm talking about here, but the piece was, in my mind, only made to be seen in the monitor, and everything else was in service of that, kind of, which I hadn't really done before. And then blowing on. These are like close-ups of the masks, and I think I have a million of them. But I tried to kind of like let them turn into what they wanted to be. And I also don't get to paint very much. And I'm gonna blow through all this stuff really fast. But I just figured I might as well, instead of like going out. No. Like, well, I could go back to it, but I like not have enough time to talk. I don't know. Okay, and then this is, I'm also gonna go through this kind of fast, but this is a piece I made at MoCA. And basically, I wanted it to appear that there was a hole in the back of the room, but it was also like an idea of making the migraine projection a little bit stronger. So it's also all the pictures from my phone from that year, which was a totally different, like 2 years later, I think. And I made it anaglyphic 3D in Final Cut just by separating the colors and moving them away from each other. And then I made these thrift store glasses into anaglyphic 3D glasses with lighting gels. So it was like really anti-technology scrapping, kind of. But I just wanted the effect. And then the piece went through many iterations before it became this. But the original fireplace was supposed to be, well, it's like really dark, I don't know. Maybe you can get back to that later. But just the physical side of this was a projection. Oh, I forgot about sound. This was a song I always wanted to sing, and it's like about like being a tightrope walker, and I was like getting overwhelmed with anxiety at this point and insomnia. And so there's 2 soundtracks, but I don't have a copy of the other one. The other one is like really intense and in your face, and they're like battling each other. But the face projected is me, but I look like a monster. And it's on a vase, and that vase was supposed to hold my ashes when I die, which is, I realize, maybe kind of silly. But, and then when you put the glasses on, that back thing turns into this hole that looks like it's going through into another room. And then there was also, there's a lot of details, like that's a little hamburger and a hand with Lee press-on nails. And also the fabric that's on the wall was all like hand. I dipped it in glue and then brought it up to the very top and stapled it, and then it had to dry, so it was like supposed to be a marble room. But it was just, you know, my low-class fakery. And that fireplace is all foam, and it's just painted like stone. So, and yeah, I have videos, so maybe I'll just show you all of them all at once, maybe. But and yeah, this was different points in it, and there's a lot of weird pictures in that group. And then there's a text that scrolls backwards on the ceiling. That's supposed to be kind of like the insomnia part of it. And the only way to see it is in the bed, like in between. You got to get close to the sculpture, and people like tripped over and fell into it and broke the mirrors and stuff. It was like really a mess. But you can read it actually through there, but you can't really read it because it's backwards on the ceiling. So that was an experience. And I just added these because it was like potato chips I made out of clay, just because I really like making stuff, so I like to add in those. So then this is the show I did at the New Night Gallery, which was like a 6,000 square foot space. And I was terrified to do the show there because it's all my work up until this point, because there was a bunch of stuff before, was like these more maximal projects where I set up all these scenarios and there were all these conflicts within them, and they had to be tight in order for those relationships to work, I thought. But in this one, I decided to split it up and do a bunch of different rooms, and then I thought of it as like I created it so you could only enter from one perspectival view, which is right here, and then you had to walk through the rooms in a certain direction. And so I thought of it like a brain, and then you're like going around to your different thoughts. And so this is like the existential thought, and or in one way you can think of it that way, and it's just really loosely based off the stuff that my this is too much info, but my grandfather divorced his grandmother, or the grandmother, and married this really more rich, more cultured person. And they had a house in Arizona, and she had stuff from all over the world, like, I don't know if, yeah, like, she had all these abalone guitars and stuff. So these are like my renditions, and they're just cellophane on foil and then paint and stuff, and then I would cut them all up and then retile them together like abalone or mother of pearl. And I just tried to make that place feel sort of like that as like another part of it. And there was, and then I also, sorry, I left something out of this, is that since the space was so big, I just tried to expand it more instead of trying to make it smaller. So I added mirrors all to the back of this L-shaped wall. So in this process, I ended up realizing that what was happening in the mirrors was a lot more interesting to me than what was happening outside. So to me, like, that space became really what I wanted to work with. And so you'll see that in another couple projects. And then there's like weird stuff everywhere. Like there's a brain, or a hat with a brain coming out of it right there. And I made the mistake in the end of doing the sunset projection, but it was like this really amazing moment. I think you can see there's a little guy in the sunset. I was just filming, and this little man just like walked into the frame with a guitar and then went straight out to the ocean and just turned to the horizon and just started playing guitar by himself, and I just caught it all, and it was like scary, beautiful. But I put it into this, but then it got totally misunderstood, and then had to like battle against the whole LA, like, Samara's work is so LA, like it's all about relaxation and stuff. And so that was like, I learned, and there's another part of this that I'll show you in a second that that is also like a big misinterpretation. But I just wanted to play this sound here. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to touch that. Anyway, these were just a sculpture that also made sound, and it was just me playing keyboards alone at night. And I don't know, I really have to care about everything I make. So that's like another level of caring, is like to do the music too. Yeah, and everything is resin too. I don't know how much about technical stuff you guys want to go into, but I think oh yeah, this is like a close-up of the abalone. I just showed you because it's fun. And that's before it was done. So then you walk out of that room, and I should say that room had crazy loud music that was like sort of like the beginning of Apocalypse Now. So it was like helicopters, and it was, I just don't have a copy. But then you walk around the corner, and then there's this red room, and this red room had 4 stereos all playing at the same time, just news or talk radio. And these are all little animals, and like smoke and alcohol and stuff, and like a kitchen. And so this was sort of representing my other grandmother, who was like the one that got divorced from, and she was like incredibly intelligent and like knew every bird in the world, and like had all the field guides and knew every plant, and but she was a total alcoholic and smoker, and just would like lay in her room all day watching black and white TV. And she lived with us when I was little, and but I totally loved her. And so I don't know, this is just like another thought, I guess. And these were supposed to be going in and out of the wall. That was the original idea, because this is just wallpaper behind them. And I usually take 1 million pictures, so this is like kind of the way that it felt to me, but it's hard to catch it. And with all the installations, are a lot more about feeling it than just seeing it. But then I try to make the pictures into their own thing. So, and then this was the mistake. I wanted to just have the whole, because I said it was like 6,000 square feet of empty space. So I wanted to pull in a whole bunch of demolished cars and have there be a giant parking lot in front of it, kind of like to diminish the fact of my show, because I feel like everything is about balance in my work, and the show just seemed too big. So I was only able to get 1 car, and it ended up being a red Corvette. And that is not really the right car for this, because then it ended up pushing it into the, like, less than zero. I think that's the name of the like California movies, you know. And so that car was like butting up against what would be the normal entrance of the space, so you couldn't get in. But then I had fun like making sculptures of pants and stuff. And anyway, and then the last element of it was there was a stage that's all made out of Thermax too, so it's like very fragile, and the those what do you call them, railings are just PVC tube painted gold, and so that's also really precarious. But there was a purple light that just was fanning back and forth, and I thought of it as a purple light giving a performance. So it was an experiment, and that's what happened. This one I'm not going to talk about at all. We can go back to it. But this is like a totally different line of work. It's basically a sculpture made up of everyone who ever looked at it. And it, God damn, we have a really hard time not talking about it, but we can go back. So then this is my piece at PS1. And can you guys hear me okay? I need a drink of water, sorry. Oh, here, I'll put on the music. So I don't usually totally explain stuff, but I think with this one is a good place to start. So in this installation, if it's not obvious, the floor is covered with mirrors, and can you tell where I don't have a pointer. I can just use myself. But this is the line of the mirrors there. So everything below that is a reflection. So the way I thought of it is that the peach bed on top is kind of like reality, I guess you could call, like the everyday life, what we experience. And then underneath it, that thing that you see is just a green band is a surgical bed, and it has a surgical backboard. And in the reflection below, you see it down there as being the surgical bed. And then below that is this white room that's kind of, it's literally on the ceiling up there though. But it's kind of like, well, it has two big picture windows and a projection of the ocean again. So how I viewed it was that the middle bed, the surgical bed, was kind of like this place of like either choice or indecision, or it was based off a time I almost died in the hospital of pneumonia. And it's mute. Okay, sorry. I'm just gonna go to the next picture. So yeah, I almost died in the hospital of pneumonia, and this nurse who wasn't supposed to say this to me basically told me, you can either choose to live or you can choose to die, because you're like at that point, like you have to rally all of your energy right now to live. And I thought that was really crazy, but I decided, I wanted to live. And so that represents like kind of this space in between life or death or choice or just indecision or being stuck. And then the white room, to me, is more like the idea of vacation or a break or mental release, or like meditation, or just our fantasy that things will be, like if only we could go to a beach house and stay there for our whole lives, everything would be great or something. A little bit of delusion, I guess. But it also represented death. But I don't usually always say this stuff. But the thing that I found interesting in the breakthrough with this piece for me was just that this white room, I can show you some more pictures here. This white room, to me, was a interesting idea because it's sort of like a place that can't exist in this world. It can't exist in real life because you can't actually access it. I mean, it's literally on the ceiling, but no one can really go there, even though that seems like a real place. And so I thought about it more recently as kind of this idea of when you make art, you're trying to pull ideas from this really high thought place and down into material form. But then I thought that this was interesting to push it back into a thought, kind of. And another thing I forgot to mention is just that I feel personally for my own work that I have to make everything myself, and it's all super detailed, and you can't see any of the detail because you're always too far away from it, or that's reflected, which makes it twice as far away. But the fact that, like, I made it I really don't like the word spiritual, but I feel like I have to care about it in order for the whole piece to build up a momentum that can come together to make other people feel anything. So there's a lot of elements in this piece, and a lot of them were also failures I didn't end up using. But I'm just gonna show you pictures because I also have behind the scenes pictures. So if you want me to slow down, just tell me. But this is all life-size, and I know the pictures are a little confusing, but like here you can see some detail around the hospital bed, and whoops, sorry. And there's like shoe up there and books and cello, but those are all like, they're all mounted under this. I'm hiding a heating vent that went along there, so they're like upside down. So I've learned a lot about how to do everything like structurally. And then this is me standing on the mirrors so you can get a sense of the depth. Like those are my feet in the bottom. And I have video of this too. And let's see. And these are all these wheelchairs that end up looking like they're falling down the stairs. And that was based on some weird, I guess, premonitions or problems, fears. This moon thing that is like actually just a cone of, let's see. Oh yeah, I think I have music for all that, sorry. This cone thing, I didn't know quite what I was doing with it, but I made it so that it would basically, oh shoot, I have to, here we go. It's made like those other animals, but it has 4 different colors of squares on each animal. And I made this projection that was all those exact colors pulsing at it so that I could make those animals turn into like static energy moving all around, and it worked great. And I forgot to mention, when I was like in the hospital that time, I saw all these static looking animals like jumping up onto my bed, and I was on a lot of morphine too, but like they like were really there, and there was no doubting it until I told somebody, and then they were like, that's a hallucination, that's not real. So I've tried, yeah. So I forgot to say that those ones that were in Mass Murder, oh yeah, I forgot to say that the name of that other show was called Mass Murder. But those animals were like one way of thinking about them, and then this, like, I feel like hit it more on the head. But then I didn't end up using that in the piece because it just didn't work with it. It created a situation where there was like this piece and then everything else in service to this piece. So I just let it be like this weird moon in the side, and it ended up looking kind of like rocks. And then there was also this lower platform that you can get to because it's 2 floors. Oh yeah, sorry, I also forgot to say PS1 space. A lot of you guys have probably seen it, but it's like this one, it's sorry, I just want to be clear. Oh no, it's gonna take forever to be clear. Here you're looking over a railing down into the space from the 2nd floor. And that's how, I mean, I knew I wanted to do a piece in there forever because of that kind of like aerial view. So, how am I doing on time? That's a half an hour? Oh, shit. Okay. Anyway, there's just this landing, and it looks like a Midwestern basement. And it's like another way to experience the piece, because I always felt like there should be a place to sit to look at work, because I always had a hard time in museums just with the fact that you're supposed to just look at it and then you walk away, like, and you can only spend a certain amount of time, but I felt like you need to spend more time. And then there was a live feed that showed up on the monitor below, which was kind of, not sure if it was really necessary, but it color keyed in to the black, like it was basically looking at the bed. And then color keyed into the black were these words, which don't look at this beginning part because you never would see that. But it was kind of like everything that went into the piece, all the letters, all the lists, all the anxieties, all my problems. Like, it was like, because I get overwhelmed really a lot. And basically, overall, I try to put everything that I can't deal with into my work as a way of dealing with it. So that's what it is behind there. And I'm not sure if it was the most effective use of color keying, but, and then, I don't know why this picture is here again. Oh, this will show the music, but I don't need to show you the music again. We could talk about that later. But these then, I think, goes into a bunch of, okay, this is the people looking over, and that's the landing from a different perspective. And then that's looking down on the landing from the top view. And then, wow, this is really pixelated. Shit. These are just a bunch of pictures of me making everything, and I thought it's good just in terms of, just because you guys are makers, you know, and just to see like the level of detail and all this stuff never got seen by anybody, but it was still really important to me that it was there. And then this is the model I made, and this is me right before I resin everything. That's it after resining it. And then this is, I went to Michigan, like, you know, they had no budget at PS1 for this project. So I went to Michigan to build these stairways and then put them in a U-Haul truck and drove them to New York. But I only made one, and then I just cut pieces for all the rest of them. And then when I got there, I thought this was funny. Like, they're like the cellos and stuff, and they all say no pressure on them. And I was like, you're right. And then these are like lampshades. And so this is all stuff that I made in this print shop that was next to PS1 that they let me use, which was really nice of them, for a month before the actual show. And it's where I basically made everything. And the thing about it, though, that is funny is that they were all small rooms with small doors, and everything was big. And so, like, the beds I made, you'll see, like, I had to cut things apart and then put them back together just to get them out of there. But, yeah, there are all these details, and, like, yeah, this bed had to get cut apart to get out the door. And then this painting, which is the rug on the white room floor, I painted that like 4 in the morning before I had to go up. The whole thing was like madness, you know. And then I put these pictures in. That's like resin spills, and you'll see like it ends up on that table. And this was like in the very first bit of just installing to see if it would work, and I just like that picture because it does show how awkward it is. And then I have like 1 million of these, and they're really more about like, how do you put things in the air? But but the problem with my work at this point was that it was all, I made it really fragilely, and it was really big and a total pain in the ass for everyone. So we had to create all kinds of jigs, and we used these special attachments that were left from the Mike Kelly show that you can, yeah, that are Japanese, that I wanted to keep but couldn't, that like they cinch up, but they can cinch back down too. So that was a big help. And the crew was amazing, but they actually, one of their crew members committed suicide like the day before I got there. So it was like a piece made in a really like, I couldn't ask them to do, like it was weird, you know. But it's always weird. Every time I've gone on site to install, it's always weird. Something happens. But this is like when we're just starting to put the mirrors in, and then like the pieces separated. And this is me like trying to explain my messed up way of making stairs to them. And I think I can just skip through these. Oh, this is an interesting moment though, because some of the stuff I made just like couldn't get into the space without having like a lot of, like they were heavy, fragile stairways or the double bed. And having fun too. And then I can probably skip through this one, but this was in the, as I don't do it, this was under the freeze tent, and I made it as kind of a political thing, but it was a freeze project, you know. And I made it, actually, weirdly, there's a comic I kind of made it after. So I'm going to go through the pictures and show you the comic. So I had this book when I was a kid. It's a Ron Cobb book. And I think he gets criticized by real comics for doing like really straightforward things. But I mean, I was a kid, and it just really, his stuff really affected me. And it's really straightforward, so it makes sense. But this one was called Thanksgiving. So in my piece, I just wanted there to be all these souls down below the freeze tent, like the center for capital and art in America or whatever. So they just were there, and then there was a mirror down below, and then they're two-sided. They have blacklight paint on one side. So in the mirrors, you see them as like these skeletons, and they have different patterns on them too. And anyway, it was just, they're life size, and it was a thing to work on. I don't know. That's a good statement. But anyway, this is in the studio, and everything always looks better in the studio. Like the black light looked so much cooler and scarier. And all the combinations of the fabrics. Because it was like, I thought of them as Native Americans, but I don't want to like say anything about anything exactly. I don't know. But anyway, new project. So this is the piece I did at Canada. And in this one, I didn't get to react off of architecture, which is one way that I like really feel inspired. So I had to make it all up myself. It was a white, like 40 by 40 space or something. And so I made this walkway that goes diagonally through it. So this shot's taken from the middle of the walkway, looking into the corner. And the top portion is what's on the walls, and the bottom portion, I think I made it pretty obvious in this picture, but that's all mirror below. But the idea was that you were supposed to be able to see each wall from aerial view as if you were like floating and looking down on it. And that, so there's like a restaurant and a reception hall, and there's like all this fake stained glass I made with lighting gels, and there's like tons of details and everything. But well, basically, though, before I get into all that, like, so the idea was that you would be standing in the middle, and that it was like you were inside of a mind or something, or your own mind, and that if you were looking at one thought, you couldn't see all the other thoughts, which, I mean, I just try to make things that can kind of mimic what confusion is rather than illustrating it. Like that's been a goal of mine, or like an interest of mine. So this was one way of exploring it, and I don't know if it really worked, but I had to like. But anyway, so it's also deeper because this is like a single person's apartment that turns into a double person's apartment. Through the mirror, and then there's like a lobby too on that wall. And I mean, I was working with like a lot of optical illusions, and there were lights moving everywhere that were attached. They're clip lights attached to what's it called? Christmas tree revolver things that turn Christmas trees around in circles. So they were just like shittily going like that underneath the walkway. And yeah, this is all life size, so aerial view. And the sky was kind of part of it, but that was it. I don't know. This is the model, and like I never get as far as I want with models because I basically just like I'm always behind schedule and just have to do something. But in this model, there was going to be an orchestra, which I still want to do sometime, but that didn't end up happening. And then these are just like on, behind, like in my studio and stuff, working on everything. And then I sent everything in pieces because they didn't have a budget either. And then this is the first day on site when I was doing tests, and I actually ended up liking some of this stuff better than the show itself, just for its simplicity. And also, it's not, like my stuff's super specific usually. But yeah, there's just tons of work, like in all these curly chairs, I just made them up there because I was like, we need to have this style. But there were like thousands of, or not thousands, but there was like 100 chairs in all or something. And then we had it resined by somebody else upstate, so there's like bugs stuck in all the resin and everything. It was, I mean, I think it's charming, but it was madness, kind of. But this is just all lighting gels, and those are the owners of the gallery installing the work. Just the way it goes sometimes. But it was really difficult on everyone. And there's like Christmas presents. But I'm going to keep on going fast, but then we can go back. So this is Yerba Buena in San Francisco, and this is like a 2,000 square foot space. And it has 18 ceiling vaults that you can see up there, and they all have skylights in them. So this one I was really inspired by the architecture. So you can see in the end, I made a mirrored floor that looked like an ice skating rink, kind of, but it was on the same level as the regular floor, and I don't think I'll ever do that again. But there was just a fake railing around it. And this is kind of a shot taken from a lift so that you can really understand it, but no one ever saw it from this point of view. But I learned a lot from this piece because you could only really see into one of the vaults or two of the vaults at one time. So you had to walk around the entire piece to see all of it. And in that way, it was more intimate. But my idea of the whole piece was that it would be, I think I have to go back to explain this one, though. It would be like you walk into the space, and there's a mezzanine around all the sides, and you can walk all around, but you feel like that space where the mirror is actually an atrium. And then you look down, and you feel like there's an apartment building down there that has had its roof ripped off of it. So then you get the experience of seeing all that. But it was also super science fiction in a lot of ways. And I also thought when I initially saw this space that I wanted to make all of them, let's see, I wanted to make every room into this kind of room, which I called the cold rooms. And I thought of them, and I just saw them, like 18 of them, like all together, kind of like, this is the total wrong word, but at that time I thought communism. You know, like I thought I wanted to like make this thing, but then I realized it's not the right thing. But what I did think about though is that this is like, I was in a really dark place, and I was like, this is where we're going. Like everyone's just going to be in their little perfect hotel room with their computer, with no entrance and no exit, and just a big window, but you can't see anything out of it because it's like frosty. And they talk to all their friends all the time online, and they think they have a whole life and a whole everything. Oh shit, 45? Oh no. Okay.
You're totally fine.
Well, anyway, there was three different kinds of rooms. There were stained glass rooms, and there were 6 of them. Then there was these country rooms. Well, for lack of a better word, but they were supposed to be, I don't know what the word is, like full of desserts, and they had this country thing, and they all had warm lights. And then the cold rooms had cold lights and very little in them, and the stained glass rooms all were supposed to be huge messes, but I learned it was really hard to make a mess on the ceiling, like 40 feet up in the air on lifts and stuff. But anyway, each of the vaults was 17 by 7.5, but the actual usable space, because I don't know if you noticed, but they're curved. So the usable space was like more like 6 by 8 or something. So I downsized the objects by a little bit less than half. So like this couch is like a little longer than my wingspan. And I'll just, oh no, I don't want to go over. This is what it was like in my studio, but this is what I actually really wanted the whole piece to look like, having this kind of like different quality, but then the daylight coming out of those skylights was such an important feature of the piece. And these are the things with lighting gels. And this is it shipping out of my studio. And I know we need to get on to another project. And this is glue, making those curtains stiff. And this is when they're stiff and they're upside down. And that's a cat. And everything had to be stiff because the stuff was all upside down. So it's been like an engineering nightmare a little bit, and interesting. But just for me, like everything is like a big thing. Okay, good. now we're at the Whitney Project. So it was really important to me to make a space that was accessible because my brother-in-law has ALS, and I just know I wanted him to be able to see it. So I worked with them to create this entrance to the piece because I wanted there to be a platform you could look down into. So this is people on the platform. And then this is the view looking down into the mirrors. And there are mirrors on top of the space and on the bottom of the space. And the way I set it up, maybe I'll come back to this picture after I show you the setup. So I think this one is good. So it's basically just like working on the floor level was one level, and then it came across. There was like I called it a walkway, but it was actually a vent that had to be left open for the condensation because it's a museum. Then there was a center piece, like just built as a plywood, like loft or whatever. And then it had pieces, sculptures attached to the bottom and top of it. And then there was a whole hanging and ceiling part that had the mirrors on it, and then there's a separate one that had another kind of like framework. And then I built this piece modularly, but I can talk about that in a second. So basically what that did is it created, like for instance, down the one where you see the bed right there, that's underneath another one, so you only can see it in the reflection. So let's see, now I think I could go back to the... So the really basic structure is that there's a white, this is like how I think of it, there's this aspirational wealth level that is all white and has a jacuzzi and like a mini bar and everything. And in this picture it doesn't look that white, but it's very like luxury looking. And then there's a chair over there on that walkway, which is really the vent. And this is all totally upside down in real life. And so the clouds moving go under the chair. In the original idea, I had like a small patio and a chair on the outside of the building, and then the person was like almost looking like they could fall off, and they would be falling into the abyss of the sky. And I still really want to do that project, and I'm working on it. And that would have changed the piece a lot. But in this way, maybe it's more perfect because this aspirational wealth thing, it doesn't have any danger in it at all. And then, and then 2 floors down is where you see those blobs on the other. Can you get, if you get confused, just tell me if you're confused. But those blobs are people in sleeping bags, and they're on the hospital level, and they're pretty hard to see in real life. But and so there is, I think, 8 vignettes in all, if you want to call it that. So then this is looking up into the mirror, so the same thing happens. But one thing I was really working with is what was happening on the street at the same time. So down there, those 2 white trucks, those are really on the street. And then the changing lighting was always like it got really dramatic. And there was moving lighting too in this one, but in this case it was just mirrors hanging in these back areas that you don't see from the railing. And they had fans blowing them in circles and then lights pointed into them. So they created like as if, like if you live in a New York apartment and the cars are turning, you always like see their headlights on your walls all the time. And I always thought that's the most beautiful thing, and so that's why I put it in there. But every level is super personal, but and I'm happy to tell you about it. But more importantly, I think it's kind of like I was trying to set up a structure where all the classes could be, well, I guess what I mean to say is that it feels like you can fall from one class really easily into another class just within seconds. Like if something goes wrong with your health, or like just, I guess what it was is I was, you know, sweating bullets and freaking out like always. And somehow it came to me to like stop trying to take the conflict out of the piece in order to make it a piece. Instead, try to put all the conflict into it. So I've been trying to work on building up pieces that can be all of that and don't have an answer. So to me, like, it's really important that, I know we're running way over those, okay? Because I also want to hear your guys' questions, because I'm better at that. It's really important to me that, like, that room down there, I think that I have a closer picture. I'm just going to go back one. No, I don't. I changed my whole thing last night, so that's what happens. So that thing down there, it's like steel case chairs, which are the kind of chairs we got at Property Control in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Property Control is like the place that was like the university's giveaway of their furniture. And that's how my whole house was, our whole house was like industrial furniture. And we were, like, in this one, I'm making copper enamels, or, like, it's, like, about remembering making copper enamel on the table and, like, painting and craft projects. And there's, like, a little chicken pot pie. And, like, there's tons of details and everything that you don't see. And then the hospital level is mostly just based on my brother-in-law and the fact that, like, yeah, he's totally paralyzed, like, all of a sudden. And it's just a fucked up thing. I don't know if I can say that. And then that level up there that's embedded is my actual apartment, which you can see it in this picture. These are all different lighting scenarios because the lighting changes constantly. But there's like a refrigerator with food in it, and it really is my apartment. Like, it's this exactly. Yeah, and I know I have more to say about it, but I put in a bunch of photos that show it in different ways. Oh, there you see my apartment better. And then I think I have, I don't know. And then I have videos of everything too, but oh, there's like the dad and he has the baby and they're looking at themselves and the thing. But I really wanted to make this, actually, in my perfect world, it would have been a performance involved where that somehow, like with conveyor belts or something, it was like people going down like that into it. Like some people would be upside down and some people would be right side up and just walking. But it would be kind of like the marching scene. And, well, this is probably, you guys are going to think I'm really lame, but, you know, in the wall when everyone's jumping into the meat grinder, that thing really, really informed my childhood. Like, I thought, yeah. And so I always thought of it, and so I thought that would be the most amazing thing. So, and it also had sound, which I'll just play really quick, and then I will stop. I think I have to go back. Oh. Oh, no, I added the sound of the video. That's what's happening. Okay, so, I know everyone has to go. Oh, here's the close-up. Oh, wait, where was it? That's the close-up. And then this one, that office is like, sort of like my sister's and her brother-in-law's office in Midtown, where they used to retouch faces for magazines, like for all the Condé Nast magazines. And then she went to Poland to teach everyone how to do her job. And now her job isn't available, and she's taking care of him, and it's just fucked. It's been a bad year. But, and then here you can see, like, what the hospital is more like. And I went to many nights of no sleep painting the toilets that I made with nail polish so they look dirty. and stuff. So and like all the backs of the wheelchairs have little bags on them, and like they're all sewn. And anyway, and then I think there was one more picture. This is like at night. Oh, this is the model. This is in my studio. And I was going to talk about how it was modularly built, but I don't know what's more important, to stop and let you guys have questions, or I could talk about that later. That's the inside of the thing, and I don't know why that's there. Oh, this is the jacuzzi, which I had fun making. And oh, this is the interesting picture. This is like something I learned. It was when we were just first installing. I'm on the other platform looking across, or no, I'm not. I'm actually there. But the person who took the picture is over here. And I just like was so stunned by that plaid light that comes in. And like kind of like doing these installations, it's always like I have to have a plan, because you have to convince people, and then they hate your plan, and then you have to make a new plan. And then you have to adjust everything all the time. But one thing that's nice in the process is if you have a moment like this, like maybe I could make an installation that was like this, because these ones have required interaction with, oh, funny, I put music on this, scratch acid, I think. Oh yeah, I forgot I did that. Anyway, I don't know. There's so much that went into everything I don't even know. And also my thinking about it is like about making new structures to be able to describe these impossible thoughts is really what I'm interested in. So the pieces, like, they can sometimes get close to what I wanted it to be, but to me, like, they're always like failures and sacrifices, and I don't, there are a lot of things that happened in this piece that didn't get in, and that always happens, and for better or worse. Like, can I go on just for one more second? Like, and this might make you guys mad, I don't know, but initially, because Trump just got elected when I was making this in the studio, and so that white walkway against the windows is actually up above you, and I had to send them all the pieces of grading in advance, or that was the plan. And so I was painting and grading, and I was painting it was light gray, and I was painting it with a lighter and darker gray to become swastikas, but it was taking forever. And I just didn't know whether it was like really, I mean, I'm good with misinterpretations, but I just didn't know whether, at a certain point, there's just so many decisions to make about whether it's, the balance of it, whether it's making it too clear, then it really loses its power. And also, I didn't want people to think that I wanted that world. I wanted to come off that I was critical of the aspirational wealth world that we live in, rather than being like for it. So I don't know. I assume people are smarter than I am usually, but when you make art, you sometimes slide down that bad thing of thinking that no one will get it. So anyway, I think I put other things on after this just to be last night when I was, wait, why is it going out? What? Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's too late. Oh, I put the, this is funny because this comes from the same book that I saw when I was a kid, and I always like it because when I first went back to grad school when I was like 35, this guy came into my studio, and he really upset me because he was just like, you're a really meek person. And I like had like years of people telling me that I was a doormat and stuff, but I didn't really feel that way. I just felt like I was more interested in other people than me or something. But anyway, he said that, and then like 20 minutes went by and we were just still talking about stuff. But then at the end of it, he said, you make really aggressive work, but you're really meek. And I thought, like, that can work, right? But I also thought that isn't popular. That's not a popular way to be, because now I'm going to be like lecturing you guys. But I feel like you do have to be like this strong personality and like a really confident person. That's why I like look at my artwork to talk, because otherwise I feel like I can't really talk because I'm just talking to it. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there's, for some reason, you can figure it out. You're smarter than me, probably. But anyway, it's funny because I was showing these to my dad, who's a pretty interesting person, and he was like, Ron Cobb, God. He was like, that guy, he just like came around and just copied everyone, and then he just like did like the easiest shit that everyone would like, which is our problem in art too, like in every media. Like, you're always wondering, are you just doing the stuff someone would like? And that's not good for art. So anyway, I thought that was funny, though, that I have a connection to it, but he thinks it's a sign of total, you know. Anyway, you guys get it. Anyway, I'm going to make this dark. Do you want to put lights on you? Does anyone have a question? Do we even have time? Okay. Yeah?
Have you ever thought about set design for a movie or theater?
Yeah. Well, I made, seems really loud. I made a film in 2003, I think, with these two guys who are really good filmmakers, where we did everything. We made the sets, and then I was the actor, and then they shot it, and we all did the lightings while we were shooting it, but it was like totally stressful, and it was a feature. And I enjoyed making that, but I didn't know how to access that in New York, and then I moved to LA, and then it seemed really clear to me that there's a real division. Like, there are the set unions were really strong, and there was a really like a marked way of getting up through it. And it was also the beginning of the recession, and I couldn't get a job anywhere doing anything, so I didn't go that direction. But I have had some offers to do stuff. The thing is, I have this like uninformed view on it, where I think that it should be more like the sets, the acting, and the lighting and the music should all have their own integrity and democracy, and they shouldn't just be like, the sets shouldn't just be in service of the piece, because then the sets could fight against the piece or create problems within the piece or create the wrong environment. But I haven't really found anyone who's like interested in really doing it different, that has also access to the resources you need to do something like that. Because you need like people, like acting companies, unless you just do it on a skit form, which is actually like really beautiful. Like, the first thing I saw that really inspired me kind of in this last maybe 12 years was I saw that movie Evil, that Tony Orsler made it, but he made it with Mike Kelly and like a group of other people, I think in the woods somewhere around here. Or wait, where are we? I don't know. I don't know where he made it. I think in New York. Sorry. But it's really great if you can ever get a copy, because they're really hard to find, but the school might have an EII membership, and then you can rent it for cheaper. I think it's in 3 parts, and then Sonic Youth ended up naming their next, or like album later, Evil, based off of that. But that's pretty cool. But it's very low tech. But I like really low tech stuff. Like I didn't show you a bunch of stuff, which I still could. There was like all color keying and all like putting texts into sculptures. And but I felt like they were getting really not cold and intellectual, but they were getting too much like they were trying to tell you something a little bit, or you could misinterpret that. And so I felt like they can only be a layer on it. But I always do the tech really bad. I really need someone to help. Help me. But yeah, did that answer your question? Go ahead.
So much could be asked about the amazing work that you've shown, but I'm really curious about how there's so much work. Like, you're super prolific in producing objects. What's your technique, or what are your tricks for doing that? And could you tie that in maybe to going to school here? Like, were there things that you learned along the way, processes, in order to just kick out so much work?
Sadly, I really didn't learn it here. But it wasn't because it was just me. I was kind of a kid when I was here. And I also, one thing that I didn't understand was, I think you have to know where you want to go in order to get there. And I had never really met very many working artists. And the ones I had met were really jaded about it. Like, my dad was super jaded about it, but he had wanted to be an artist. So I just didn't know, either that or they didn't take me aside and talk to me about the projects that they were doing, because there was just like, you're a little kid. I'm not talking about you guys, I'm talking about me. Like, you're a little kid and they're an adult, and they don't want to include you in their actual life because it's like a job. So I just felt kind of unclear. And then I was also telling Brad, which I decided I'm going to say, that I had a weird experience here because it was a different administration, but they like offered me a full ride, and that's the reason why I decided to come to the school. And then 2 weeks after being here, they canceled the program, and I didn't have any ride. And it was already too late to change the plan because my parents already like gave everything they could just to get me out here. So that really pissed me off, and it sent me into kind of like wanting to quit every year. And it kind of like, I was young enough so that I probably took it out on my authorities rather than tried to make friends with them. And I never told anyone, but you learn. But about your question, which is a very good question, I worked, I would say, out of like total panic and stress, and I only was able, like that first show I showed you was a good example of like, I was like, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, and then I just knew that I had to do it, and the only way to do it was to cut up scraps of light stuff and just glue it together with construction glue and screw it and just like call it a chair. And and I knew that I wanted to like make, like those stereos are all really detailed. Like it was about a breakup, and the person like made stereos from scratch, and he was also a painter, and so I painted all these paintings that weren't in the show, and I didn't let anyone see them, but actually people bought the paintings because people do buy paintings, so that supported the show. But that's been like a constant, that's a tangent though. But for the later shows, like the Whitney show, by the time everything got approved, I had 2 months to make everything. So I got all the wood, and I realized that all the wood laid out wouldn't even fit into my studio as flats, because they're all built as flats that get screwed up into the structures. And that alone was a lot to figure out and to get approved and everything. So I just did them in sections, and I actually, hold on, I'm gonna have a heart attack. I had one person start helping me, and then another person, and they were really nice. But it's like, you have to learn a lot to work with other people. You have to learn how to be cool and let things change and have them not be exactly how you envision them because those people have, their own self-esteem and stuff to deal with. So, but that was great having them help me. And then once I was on site, but one thing that's really nice about museums is they provide really a super stiff but very good set of people to help you. So, yeah, in the back.
I think a lot of people, and maybe younger people especially, think about creative making as like a love or a passion or something you do for pleasure, or because it feels good and it's fun. And you're talking every time you're talking about a show, you're saying what a nightmare it is, and that it's total stress and anxiety and fear. And I'd just like you to talk about that.
Yeah, that's great. Good one to bring up. I don't know. I have a running conversation with my friends of like, why can't we build the fun back into it, or like what are strategies to build the fun back in? But I don't know if I actually have an answer for you. We live in a complicated world. Being successful in this world, which is what you need in order to get opportunities, is so multifaceted that my take on it, because I tend to be pretty positive until I like break down about it, is that you just have to try to do all those things, and then you get better at them pretty fast, actually. And then there's a whole other set of things you have to try to do. And then along the way, you have to catch yourself when you're hating what you're doing and see if there's some way that you can change it. But, I don't know the answer, because some of the paradox that I'm currently battling is that some of the pain of, like, I don't know how to say it, but I feel like you probably know what I mean. So I started by saying like that I try to take the pain of the world or of things that I'm worrying about or whatever, and put it in the work, at least so there's a place for it to go, or like a structure it can sit inside of, and I could maybe walk away from it or burn it or something. But, or actually what it is the whole process of making it usually tends to exercise it out of my, like doing the insomnia piece or whatever, even though I didn't like the way it looked and stuff, just spending a lot of time really thinking about those thoughts, it kind of exercised me of having anxiety for about a year. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's if you want to be an artist and you actually are gonna make it your life, it's like I can't think of the right words, but it's actually a total life commitment. Like, you can't be half-assed, and it's going to change how every relationship you have is, and that can be all really, really good. So I think, though, in there's like this thing that people aren't very good at talking about, which is like, how do you take care of yourself while you're making work that's pushing yourself? Because I of course love to make beautiful things, but I do think we do have to push ourselves to kind of like make it be meaningful beyond that, even if it's not like political. It doesn't have to be political, but it just has to mean something to you. I guess that's really the bottom line of it. Like, if you would be sad if you saw it in the dumpster, then you're doing something right. Unless you already exorcised it from you, and then you do want to see it in the dumpster. But I don't really know. I think it's like a life of sadness and depression. Just kidding. No, I don't know. But, I think you have to be ready for that.
And on that note, we'll take one more question.
Hey, I didn't know you were here.
Are you working on something now? Are you excited about it?
I'm confused right now. I have a bunch of shows that I haven't done that I was supposed to do, but I don't want to do them for some reason. Because of it's like redoing a show in the same architecture, which isn't that fun. Or I have one that's like a remaking of another show, like remaking the Canada show in LA, but it's all political and everyone's, it's like showing it with someone who then the other person doesn't want me to show it with that person because it looks like they would. Yeah, it's just like weird, and so I don't like to get caught in that too much. And then I am trying to make sculptures that are actually sculptures because I do actually have to just survive too, but ones that I feel good about. So I've devised 2 of those, and I owe a couple people sculptures for things they've done, like the woman who bought the piece at the Whitney and is supposed to donate it. I'm supposed to give her a sculpture. Like, I didn't know about any of these structures until really recently. It's really impossible to get this information from people because, it is, I think. So, yeah, I was going to concentrate this year on trying to figure out how I could make a smaller sculpture that would really work for me, almost like a model for a bigger piece. But ultimately, my big plan, is to take each one of these foundations. I hope you can keep this between you guys. Take all these different foundations that have really beautiful buildings and make a model of a really beautiful model and make the installation I would want to make, and then bring it to them and say, this costs $80,000 and I really want to do it, and it's probably going to cost more than that, and because it's been really upsetting to the process of an idea, not that idea, this idea, not that idea, and just keep on getting closer to the deadline, and then still not, no one will ever tell you the budget, I've found. You always have to it's like this weird game, and I'd just be able to make better work if they would just tell me the budget. But so I've actually had a nervous breakdown over all of it, and now I'm just trying to figure out what will be, because I don't want to be unhappy, because I got into this because I wanted to not be unhappy. So I hope that answers. I'm not really I kind of feel like this is messed up. I scheduled all these talks right at this point when I am not really the best at being yeah. But I think it's good to hear the downside too, because it's real, and you're gonna have to deal with it, or you already do deal with it. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
I can't see you very well with the light.
Back then, I definitely wouldn't have said Samara totally is aiming to be in the movie by Nicole. That didn't seem like that was what you were interested in back then. And it sounds like a little bit from what you started just previously about your experience that may have been the case too, because your experiences were kind of mixed with it. And so I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit, because particularly in the context of the school. It's interesting for students to know, when did you decide that's the kind of art career you wanted to pursue? Is that what made you decide to go to grad school? And then, how did you take the steps to, when did you decide to do it? And then what were the steps that you took to kind of get yourself on that path that that's what you were aiming for?
Okay. Yeah, I was just told that I have to end this soon, so I'll answer fast. Well, it was 15 years before I went back to grad school, and I was completely against going back. Because I didn't believe in buying into the system, But I didn't realize that it was also a total community, and that was what I was lacking. Other than I only hung out with musicians pretty much in that time period, And just because music is differently accessible than art, and I didn't have that kind of connection with art. I just wanted to make art, but I didn't like have the kind of connection where, like a historical connection, where I would go into a museum and just feel like, ooh. You know, now I do more because I've learned so much more. But to answer your question, what's the most important part of your question? And I'll, you know.
Like, yeah, when did you decide that, like, this is the, you want that kind of, like, art world, art career, and then how did you start on that path? Like, what was the step you took?
Well, the first step I took was applying to grad school. Like the real, I mean, I had taken many steps before that had always like, you know, like I got to New York by selling out a painting show at a burrito wrap place in Austin, you know. Like they gave me enough money to get here. But then it didn't help me continue, you know. I just wasn't good at working on, I wasn't good at pretending like I was. I think what happened is I tended to see the world as 2 worlds or maybe 5 worlds, and it was all based on class. And I tended to think of myself as on the lower side of that class always. And so I didn't feel like I wanted to talk to or had any, I didn't think that other people would want to talk to me. And it was, so that is like actually a real truth of how, because I think that the people that I've noticed that don't need to school and seem to be able to be successful are the type of people who are really good at talking to people way like so different than them that can give them a lot of money and support, and that's how it's done, you know. But I'm still kind of like that, still a little resistant, and I don't know. Actually, though, the real answer I'm thinking is I pretty much failed at everything else I wanted to do. It's kind of like, I think that you kind of have to do art if you're the one to do art, and if you could do something else, you should do something else. Because, but I know. I don't know. I don't want that to be my ending statement, but. But what I mean is, like, I think the world is changing a lot, and there's a lot of different kinds of art going on, and so there are a lot of different places for it. So I don't know. That was just my experience, but it was good for me just to do it, because, like, if you don't feel like you have any other options, actually your artwork gets a lot more interesting, and you can talk to people in a different way because it's actually important to you. Anyways. Thanks for listening. Thanks for inviting me here.